Alrighty, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Meteorologist Parker Beasley with your 1 p.m. Weather Authority Alert Day update. New, fresh off the press, we have decided to issue a Weather Authority Alert Day for Wednesday because the scenario looks to be unfolding a little bit in a worse fashion for parts of the plains, which means that there could potentially be worse impacts later down the road associated with this front when it gets into parts of the mid-Atlantic, which includes southwest and central Virginia. So here's what you need to know about your Weather Authority Alert Day. It's going to be a strong front that's going to be pushing in, which is going to be bringing the chance for severe weather, gusty winds, heavy rain, perhaps even some small pea-sized hail, maybe dime-sized hail, I think at most. And then the potential for tornadoes is never non-zero when we're talking about severe weather pushing through. So that's sort of what we're looking at. The reason this is kind of a big deal is because it's really the first severe weather threat of this season, not just for us, but for a lot of other states as well. They're also going to be dealing with some heavy winds, some heavy rain, gusty winds, the potential for tornadoes, straight line winds, and then some areas are going to be seeing blizzard conditions on the more northern and western side of this storm, like parts of Denver, into parts of Missouri, Iowa, Kansas. It's a pretty big storm that we're going to be watching here. For us locally, the biggest storm threat is going to be along and east of US 29. So we're talking areas just east of Lynchburg, near Halifax County, Charlotte, Campbell, Appomattox, maybe even into parts of Amherst and Nelson counties, as well as Rockbridge, maybe eastern Bedford and eastern Pennsylvania. That's what we're talking about at this current moment. Now, that is subject to change over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours, as we'll continue to look at the new data that comes in. But so far this morning, the signal has only pointed towards increasing the risk for the Wichita, Oklahoma City, Dallas areas for the day. Earlier this morning, the Storm Prediction Center out in Norman, Oklahoma, put out their severe weather risk for the day. That was a level 2 out of 5. It has since been upgraded right around 11:30 this morning. They upgraded it to a level 3 out of 5, so an enhanced risk. So they're expecting instability to grow a little bit more with this system, which is not really what you want to see because then the severe weather threat just goes up. For tomorrow's risk, they've actually expanded the enhanced risk a little bit in the west to east orientation, also after expanding that day one. So, excuse me, we got a group coming through here. Let me mute really quick. Sorry about that. We have like a tour group going through the station at the moment. But tomorrow's severe weather risk has also been expanded. If we zoom in here, it's now including a level 2 out of 5 for New Orleans. Mardi Gras is this week, so they're having to cancel some of the festivities down there. Gulfport, Mobile, Shreveport, Jackson, Mississippi, Pine Bluff, Monroe, Little Rock is now included in this. Dallas is just outside. The reason being is because this is going to be an afternoon event that takes place today into the overnight and then into tomorrow morning for some of these areas. Now, when we look at the day 3, this obviously moves over into our neck of the woods. Nothing has changed. They haven't updated this just yet. But you'll notice, Savannah, Georgia is included in the level 2, Charleston, Columbia, Charlotte, Raleigh, Fayetteville, Richmond, Virginia Beach, D.C., Baltimore, Charlottesville, and then right along the Henry County into Franklin, Bedford, Amherst, Nelson, Rockbridge line. That's where that level 2 threat currently is. So when we look at what we're talking about here, pretty nasty stuff going to be unfolding. We've got a big line of thunderstorms that gets going later tonight and then eventually moves into what you would call Dixie Alley, which is right in this area here. Later tomorrow afternoon, right around 3:20. This is going to continue to march forward over the course of our Tuesday. But you see later tonight, right around midnight, is when these storms get fired up in Dallas, or just west of Dallas, near Lubbock, and then continuing to push off towards the east through the overnight, early morning hours east of Dallas, into the Arkansas area, into the Louisiana area. Then once we get into the afternoon here, this is really when things could pop off, because you get some daytime heating, temperatures get into the 60s, 70s, maybe the low 80s in these areas, and then the instability just goes through the roof. So the warmer the temperature, the more fuel there is out there, so to speak. And so we're watching that very, very closely. And all of this will eventually head our way, right? We're talking overnight Wednesdays, or Tuesday night into Wednesday is when we'll see some of the impacts of this system. But it does look like the early morning hours between about, say, 5 and 10 o'clock is when we'll see most of the precipitation. Then on the backside, you notice these little dots popping up. Those are the things that we're worried about. Those are single cell storms. Some of those could be supercells, which will be rotating. And that's sort of our concern, again, for that area along US 29 and out towards the east. So that's what we're watching here. Here's another update on the severe risk. That will likely change. I expect it to push east, just because the timing of arrival for the storms looks earlier. And again, if it's early in the morning, we're not going to get that daytime heating. We're not going to have as high of instability, say, on the western side of the viewing area towards Wytheville, Pulaski, Blacksburg, even Covington and Floyd. I don't think we'll see the instability really that high. I would go as far east as to say Roanoke. I don't think we'll get as warm. But the areas right around Lynchburg, South Boston, Moneta into Charlotte Courthouse, those areas will likely get into the upper 50s, maybe mid 60s by the time some of the heavy bands of rain arrive. So that's going to be the thing that we look out for, is the timing of this system. Here's a look at Tuesday, 11 p.m. Some light, moderate rain associated with a warm front. It's going to be hot. It's not hot, but warm, sticky, muggy, a little bit breezy Tuesday night. Then once we get to Wednesday, here's a look at 4 a.m. Some of these scattered showers moving in, some pockets of some pretty heavy rain, as most of the atmosphere is going to be pretty saturated. We're talking dew points right up close to that temperature, all the way through the atmosphere. Once we get to Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., notice these bits of oranges and yellows. That's the heavy pockets of rain that we're tracking. Then by 10 a.m., a lot of the moisture is pushed off or kicked off towards the east. But then have a look at what's left behind. Stewart, Martinsville, up into Bedford, Lexington. There's almost like a secondary line of storms that gets going. These will likely pack a punch. That's why that thin line of the severe risk here has been put into place, because it's sort of those storms that we're tracking right around here, which is right along that line that divides the slight and marginal risk for severe weather, the level 1 and 2. So if those shift west a little bit, we could see that slight risk or the level 2 out of 5 expand west. If the timing is pushed earlier, I think maybe we see it expand a little bit further east, or push east, the marginal risk, that is. So it's going to be shifting a little bit up until the time of arrival. Then once we get to about 11 or 12, we see these little pop-up red dots here. Those are those supercell or single cell storms that we're talking about right here near Alta Vista, Danville, South Boston. Likely going to see some of these pop up into the south side Lynchburg area. So that's what we're watching through the middle of the day, early afternoon hours on Wednesday. Then once we get to about 3 o'clock, I think we're in the clear. We'll actually see maybe a couple of lingering showers pushing through out this time, right? And then parts of the west-facing slopes, believe it or not, will likely get a little bit of a wintry mix after this is all said and done into Thursday and possibly even into Friday morning. Something else that we're tracking are the winds at 5,000 feet. This is 850 millibar winds, roughly a mile up in the air. These are howling between 50, 60, 70, 80, maybe 90 mile an hour winds. And these are primarily out of the southwest, whereas the surface winds are out of the west. So there's going to be a little bit of a twisting with altitude for our winds. So that's going to add a little bit of shear to some of those storms. So some of them might be rotating when they come through. We've had a look at the tornado parameter. It's not super high, but it's definitely worrisome for this event. It's something that we are tracking. Something else that we're watching is the future storm energy. Just because of the timing of this system, it doesn't look super impressive. Like here's a look at tomorrow morning. Remember, we're not getting that daytime heating. Once we get into, say, 1, 2 o'clock, you get sort of those darker greens in there. That's a little bit stronger instability, maybe a little bit of yellow in here. That's where some of the nasty stuff is going to be unfolding. But you notice as it builds in, 3 a.m., a lot of that instability goes away because there's not much fuel, right? Now down here, we're working off the warm ocean waters in the Gulf. But over land, you really depend on surface heating from the daytime to fuel some of these storms that get going. Once we get to about 10 a.m., we get a little bit of sunshine. Seeing some of those brighter colors of blue, light green embedded in there. Then once we get to noon, notice parts of south side, right where we were tracking some of those single cell storms. They're going to have the potential to kind of erupt, and then later in the day, further off towards the east by 5 p.m., we're talking temperatures pushing that 70-degree mark. So temperature is going to be huge with this system. The timing is going to be huge. Impacts are going to be pretty widespread felt across southwest and central Virginia. Just scattered rain showers, some heavy, some moderate. Gusty winds. I think we see some straight line winds close to about 30 miles per hour at times. And then even in some of these storms, if they do go severe, one of the requirements for a severe storm are winds, 59 miles an hour or more. So we are continuing to watch that. We'll likely have some severe weather. Now, if that's severely warned or not, it doesn't really matter. The impacts are really going to be the same. And then we're continuing to watch for the potential for some tornadoes to pop up, because it's never non-zero with a system like this. This system is extremely dynamic. Again, we talked about blizzards out west and to our north, and we're talking about severe weather across the south and the mid-Atlantic. So to sort of recap events here and end things, we're talking about a big-time front, first one of the season that will likely bring severe weather to the mid-Atlantic, southwest Virginia, and central Virginia region. Showers and storms are going to be pushing in early morning between about, let's say, 5 a.m. and 10 a.m. That's when the bulk of the moisture arrives. Through the middle of the day, we'll see some isolated strong storms associated with this front. And then I do believe the strongest of what we see is going to be right along that US 29 corridor and pushed out towards the east. With that said, we'll have more updates, especially coming in the next couple of days. Wednesday will likely be streaming fairly often, giving you updates if we're not on TV or on the air. So stay tuned to WSLS.com/weather and to our social media pages. Jeff, Edward, Delaney, and I all have our social media pages, Facebook. If you just look up our names followed by 10 News, you will find us, and you can find the most recent up-to-date information there.